those philosophies. Truth be told, they're the only Bill society who can stand on Bill. And they have sent their absolute best tonight. By which I mean, they've sent Beth and all these friends. I mean, Beth is just rude. And I say this not just because Beth is the chief adjudicator of a competition I'm participating in tomorrow, but also because she's the chief adjudicator of another competition I might contemplate going to in the future. Really though, can we talk about how all of these people are basically just being buddy? That is to say, a cross between an old man who wishes things were the way they were back when potatoes were running a little low, and also a child lost in a supermarket desperately seeking out. But genuinely, hear me out on this. So I'm aware you guys might not know the Cork people, but their names are, right, Kieran, Cuiva, Beth, and Keen, right? You may be noticing something there, right? We've got Keenva, aka she puts the shit in debating shit posting. We've got Keenron, who gets drunk and isn't even fun, just plays the piano but refuses to play Piano Man when he's asked, and that's all people want to hear. And then there's Beth, whose name is only 4 letters away from being Keen. Who also, can I just say Beth, you look like this much. But Cuiva is pretty good though. You know, even though I've heard a rumour that she's going to throw some shade tonight, be a bit of a meanie, that's funny. So that was actually really clever, and if you didn't get that, that's Cuiva meanie, so I said that she's going to meanie. But yeah, Cuiva anyway, she can be saved from this flood that we're going to send, you know, all into court. We can only take 2 of the court debaters to choose. I say Beth and Cuiva, right? I think that's just the obvious, right? But unfortunately, you know, there's men too, and tonight we've actually got brothers. I mean, ridiculous. We've grown him here from Cork, but we kind of accept him because he goes to Trinity now. But I mean, it's still a bit disappointing that he's from Cork. But look, at least we don't usually have Kira on here. I mean, can you imagine seeing these brothers, the Daly brothers, twice daily? That was genuine. If you did not laugh at that, I want you to evaluate, you know, reevaluate, because that was really funny. And totally didn't take me several hours to come up with. But you know, really at this stage, it's getting a bit late. You guys don't think I'm funny anymore. You never did. So I'm going to put a fork here. And with that,
Are there any objections to me signing these minutes as a true and accurate account of the last private business meeting? Please. Then I shall duly sign.
This isn't true there. Just go on. That's a really funny signature.
It's upside down.
Why is it upside down?
Okay. So this is usually the part where I would introduce the guests, but they're from Cork, so I don't know.
Oh, very good.
So with that, the question before the House this evening is: this House would sink Cork into the sea. And I should now like to call upon Sarah Armstrong to propose the motion. Entitled to what are called maidens' rights. If you choose to waive those rights, you would be greeted with a thunderous round of applause.
Wait.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Armstrong, and I am honoured to open the case for the proposition. As someone who had the misfortune of growing up outside of Dublin, it is a motion that is very close to my heart. In convincing you all that Cork should be sunk into the sea, I will use 2 arguments. The first is that Cork is a god-awful place, and the second is that drowning it is both the most efficient and the most compassionate way of ridding yourself. Many years ago, I had the misfortune of going on a family holiday to Cork, and now I don't mean to be rude, but the place is somewhat lacking in culture. I know that the op will undoubtedly say that this is not an excuse to submerge an entire county into the ocean. But upon arriving in Cork for said family holiday, I was appalled to discover that there is only one respectable theatre in the entire county. And why bother going when all the actors will speak in an accent that not even I, someone who grew up in Mayo, can understand? When the BBC were interviewing people from Cork about a flood that had happened there, their accents were so complicated that there had to be subtitles. That says a lot. There is the argument that Cork isn't completely cultural, that it just has a different culture. Regarding the Gaeltacht, there is some argument. But as for the rest of Cork's culture, there's some sheep, some grass, and second city syndrome. In all seriousness, though, I can't be the only one that finds it irritating that the people of Cork are constantly trying to reassure themselves by bellowing about the fact that they think they're better than Dublin. It must be said, at the risk of sounding like Monty Python, what has Cork ever done for us? In Cork there has been no Joyce, no Yeats, no Oscar Wilde. From Cork we have had...
On that point.
No thanks. From Cork we have had yet more sheep. I have major issues with rural Ireland, but as for the purpose of this debate, I must restrict myself to Cork. But I think that in destroying Cork, there is nothing to say that this cannot be the beginning of a destruction plan of the entirety of the in places in rural Ireland, of which Cork is a microcosm, the most exciting news one will get in a week is that a neighbour's chicken has gone missing. Everyone knows everyone else, so you cannot wiggle your left toe without there being a rumour that you're having an affair with the local baker. And the majority of people are racist. This environment...
On that point?
Yes.
Kevin Smith.
This environment of isolated and narrow thinking cannot be good. And don't try to convince me that Cork is a city. It is at best a small town, and I think that the people of Cork should realise that being from a place doesn't give it a God-given get-out-of-jail-free card. Now that I have convinced you that Cork must be disposed of, I will explain my thoughts on why drowning the country is the way forward. Now, I've done the research, and apparently drowning is the most peaceful way one can die. Some chemical or other, I don't know, I'm an art student, is released in the brain, and it feels like you're floating. It's supposed to be quite a euphoric experience. Anyone who's held their breath underwater will know that for a minute or so there's a bit of anguish, but then after that, it feels like you're floating. The hormones kick in and it's fine. Bad and all as the place is, I think a peaceful death would be preferable. A massacre would be somewhat damaging to Ireland's glistening international reputation.
If you want to kill us and make us feel like we're floating while doing so, why not just give us 40 tons of ketamine?
Water is somewhat more easy to come by. I think that even if drowning wasn't the most efficient way. I think sinking an entire landmass, what a way to go. Cork could be the 21st century Atlantis. The glory and legends that would come after it would be worthy of a city like Dublin. And I mean, what better gift can we give? It did pop into my head on the way here that the new, somewhat moist Cork could be used as a tourist attraction. We could hire a few submarines, offer children's birthday party packages. It'd be marvellous. Ireland needs to develop its tourist industry. Why not kill two birds with one stone? There are some foods from Cork that we all like. Barry's tea, Charleville cheese also has a following. But we could save the recipes before the entire county is submerged. I may sound cruel, and Ock will without doubt say that, but I'm not saying we can't take survivors. If there are people from Cork who feel they would like to join us, they are more than welcome to do so before their homeland plummets into the sea. Yes. I think that by destroying Cork, we are merely accepting the inevitable fact that most Cork people, as a result of unemployment, will end up moving to Dublin anyway.
For understanding the POI, because she did say she had difficulty understanding the accent. So to rebut that proposition, I call upon Kieran Daly to introduce.
Well, despite the amount of negativity we just heard there, I would like to just thank everyone first off for the opportunity to speak here tonight. Not just to do public speaking, which is one of my favourite hobbies, but for the opportunity just to travel, to get out of Cork, because even like the small amount of travelling you do, I think really takes you out of your own life and out of that midweek grind and gives you sort of an experience that kind of takes you out of your head. Like for instance, I had to, on the way here, I got the air coach. I had to walk through Dublin for a bit. I had to walk into Trinity, look at people and say, wow, this is where I would have gone to college if I was a cunt. So don't get me wrong. I do have a very special kind of admiration for Trinity and even indeed Dublin as a whole, because there's a lot to admire. Right? There's a lot of just kind of phenomena that you don't really get anywhere else in the world. A university where it seems that literally everyone communicates in shit memes. Enough burrito places to make pretty much any normal person go, wow, that is too many burrito places. And when you're done with all that, in the evening you can bask in the glow of what I have heard is the finest heroin in Europe. But look, despite all this, we really do like you guys, And I was shocked. I was shocked when Beth came on to me last week and said, look, we have this colours debate, we're going to go up and speak. And I was shocked because when I heard the motion, it wasn't even one about, this house believes that, Cork and Dublin should have a fight or whatever. It was, this house believes that Dublin should just eradicate Cork from the planet. And I was so down in the dumps after, I couldn't even bring myself to write this speech. So I did what anyone should do when they're down in the dumps and need help, is I contacted a friend and I said, look, here's what I got to do. I have to write a speech for this debate, but I can't at the moment. I'm down in the dumps. It's a comedy debate. And they cut across me. They said, Kieran, you're in third year of college. Why are you going up midweek to speak in a debate, which is completely inconsequential? And I said, all right, stop being such a prick, Mum. So I said, forget her anyway, forget her. And you go to the people who, are like your parents, but sort of cool, like your grandparents. So I went up to them, I sat down with them, I explained the situation, and I was sitting there for a while waiting for their answer. But that was a shit idea as well, because it just gets so fucking cold up in that graveyard. So I dealt with it, I manned up, and I said, look, how am I going to deal with this sort of this serious sort of proposition to sink where I'm from? But I realised you guys have missed the boat, because your secret weapon is sitting right there. So all you have to do, look, you might have missed the boat now. All you have to do is when he comes down to Munster is just, so you can see the size of him, just get him to jump from a moderate height, and you will smash off the entire Cork subcontinent right into the Atlantic Ocean. But look, here's my brother. I have a huge admiration for him, and I think we're evenly matched, because on this side we have a daily each. We have 2 women and 2 crabby, jaded old little cunts. But I think we have the edge, because we are from Cork. But let me explain that a bit more. We commit to everything we do. We don't back out of our commitments, because we know you owe it to the people around you. If you voted Fianna Fáil once, you may as well do it for the rest of if you joined the local hurling team at 5, you better still be involved at the age of 45. If you order a pint of Guinness, you better milk it from the man boobs of the local alcoholic. And if you're riding a young one and the condom breaks, you better sellotape that bad boy together and finish the fucking job. Because if it's anything that the women of Ireland deserve, it is a man who can satisfy them sexually. And maybe also reproductive rights, but we're not so sure about that. But we are sort of, we're getting there, and I realise it's a very deep, sort of controversial issue with lots of arguments on either side and all that sort of thing. But I love interested hearing, different perspectives from Cork and Dublin, this sort of thing, especially from, from my own blood, And I think he's got a very, very interesting perspective on abortion, and indeed contraception with regards to abortion. I think his idea is just to make yourself so disgusting to worry about getting anyone pregnant. But look, fair play to him, fair play to him. You can smell him from here. Yeah, go on.
What's all that shit on your shirt? What the fuck are you eating?
That's because I was talking to you earlier, I just brushed off you. But again, I think the repeal movement is definitely a lot popular here in Trinity, and indeed in Dublin in general, much more so than Cork. And I think that is due to a fundamental difference between the way that women from Dublin decide to deal with situations, which is to become active and protest against what's happening, as opposed to the way that women from Cork do, because they're they hunker down, they're tougher. You can see with Beth and Queever, they're made of hairier, more leathery stuff. As versus the soft repeal flowers of the East. So I'm directing a lot of hate at the speakers here, and I think the hiss itself as part of Dublin requires a bit of attack as well. Indeed, this is the place that should be sung. Because the hiss is basically like the Phil, except a little less cool and with a lot less cocaine. But I'm really fascinated as well by even before we came in here, all the traditions you guys have, actually taking minutes and having your speakers walk in and having orgies in your committee room and all that sort of stuff. I couldn't believe what I heard. You must really like your fellow committee members if you're willing to fuck them after a committee meeting. I'm glad to see the back of these fuckers after a committee meeting, let alone put my dick in them. Actually, hands up, who was in the orgy? I'm just fascinated. I just want to talk to you dirty dogs. Thank God, anyway, there's no hands up on that. But look, Philosoph, we are quite small, indeed, as kind of in the way that Cork is, we're quite small. But that means that there's just less involvement. I noticed when I came in here that there seems to be such a high level of involvement and commitment. And I've heard people even failing their degrees because of how much they go to these debates and all these things. And it's it's sort of missing the point, right, when you go to college. You go to college to get a degree. I bet the people who do those things are the kind of people who go to the cinema and then fall asleep in the cinema and miss the entire film. It's sort of a masterclass in missing the point. But everyone makes mistakes. I thought inviting Nigel Farage to Trinity was a very funny one, because it's kind of like inviting Slipknot to play at a 5-year-old's funeral or something. Except you probably pissed more people off and got more death threats by doing this than inviting Slipknot. But look, I've given you a lot of guff, and in proper Cork tradition, I expect it back. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank Ciaran for that. The cease and desist letter will be arriving in the So with that, to continue the case of the proposition, I call upon Kevin Smith.
Ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society, ladies and gentlemen, all of you today know that the Hiss is an accepting place. You know, we now let in women. We now accept people from outside of Dublin. You know, we hear Meo and that thing from Galway. But there is a point at which we draw a line. You know, there's only so much inferiority we can take in losing GAA finals constantly, and yet thinking that they're competent. But this competence doesn't stretch to Cork, ladies and gentlemen, because we feel the inferiority complex is just too much. And like a bag of new kittens, it is better to just put them out of their misery and drown them. Now, a lot inside up will say that Cork floats. You know, put it in water, it floats. To that, I only have one comment. You know, there was once a ship that was called the Unsinkable Ship, whose last docking point was in Cork. Needless to say, if they fucked up the Titanic, they can fuck up anything. So, ladies and gentlemen...
Sorry, sir.
Go on, yeah.
Are you honestly going to say us drowning a load of Brits was a bad thing?
I mean, look, we're in Trinity College. There are British Army troops stationed here during the Rising. We're basically West Brits anyway, you know, like we may as well just accept our fate as being West Brits. But strangely enough, even if we were to drown Cork and bring them to the bottom of the ocean, you know, in the great, like, nation of Sealand, they'd still probably think themselves the real capital versus Atlantis. You know, such is the inferiority complex that they just can't take being second rung. So, in order to bring them to this depths of the ocean, we need something heavy to drag them down. You know, be it the cloying mediocrity of a city that's basically a town, or the deep shame, no thank you, at sinking the young Fine Gael hero that is Michael Collins. We believe that Cork has by far enough ballast to bring itself down itself. But look, what's actually lost anyway? You know, we have hostels that are halfway up a mountain when you're walking at 3 a.m. We have dodgy kebabs that excite the likes of Stephen. Like, there really isn't a huge amount that is there. We even have the likes of dialectic attacks on the Queen's English that we in Trinity pledge to uphold with words that the Cork people use, like gat and bure. And sorry, when the Cork people say they have gat, they're not being really ghetto and like trying to say they have a gun. It's more that they have drink because they're trying to cope with their stifling alcoholism to cope with their mediocrity.
On that?
No, you're gone, thanks. So look, you didn't come here today for pragmatic points as to why Cork is rubbish, because you all know it already. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. So instead, I'm going to go on a long quest of character assassinations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged today to have with us one of Ireland's most prolific entrepreneurs, who at the young age of 18 started his very own transport company for high value and precious goods. This entrepreneur has made millions over the years, but with very important and precious missions that he's been assigned to him. Most notably delivering the Corkies to Dublin in the first place, and secondly, bringing the ring to Mordor. This person is Cian Luddy. Now, when Cian isn't frolicking in the Shire or fighting dragons, Bilbo Baggins, as we call him up here in the civilised depths of Dublin, is busy running his company, delivering shame onto Cork, repeatedly and repeatedly, in the form of committee scandals. As you may have noted, I sent you up there to be fair. As you may have noted, not only is Cian a prolific entrepreneur and also a hobbit, he is also, no thank you, takes on the long tradition of the British Labour Party in dressing like a failed geography teacher and also being a radical centrist. Yeah.
He's also a fantastic lover.
Yes. Now, many of you today will know Cian for the one thing that he uses to escape from, again, the cloying mediocrity of Cork. You know, when some people embrace alcoholism, Cian embraces memes. You know, he has 94 shitposts, because I counted every single one of them. 94 shitposts on debating shitposting, and is one of its most prolific contributors. Then we have Kiva. Who, thank you.
That's not how you pronounce my name.
Quiva, I don't care, you're from Cork. Quiva is, by all intents and purposes, the wizard's apprentice. You know, like, while Kane might occasionally get a bit of a laugh from being edgy, and indeed getting almost banned multiple times before being made admin, Quiva would like post memes and then frantically wait for likes, approval from her social recluse in Cork. But it's not all bad, you know. I mean, despite being a second-tier shitposter, I'm sure Quiva has other redeeming characteristics, unlike Kieran Legs O'Dollig. At this point, I was going to put in a generic maths joke about how, you know, he's employable and most of us here who do arts aren't. But then again, he goes to UCC, so like, sure look. Aside from Robert Bill, like, soz kid. And then again, on this distinguished Cork delegation that they've sent us today, there is the affable, the irreplaceable Beth Mallon. Beth is another in the indistinctive line of Cork auditors who, at one stage or another, have fancied Beth Mallon. Those of you who've been here long enough will know the jokes. Beth is a proud possessor of extremely questionable Christmas jumpers, to which those who have been to the Cork IV will know, will reflect badly upon her character. And furthermore, I just want to congratulate Beth today for her World University Debating Championship break as a judge. You know, congratulations. At the very least, this one was for the University Philosoph Society as opposed to LawSoc, like the first. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kevin Smith. I beg you to propose.
I would like to thank Kevin for, I suppose, introducing the guests to the house. And I would now like to call upon Quiva to continue the case of the audience.
Can I just say, it's wonderful to speak in a debate that has more women in it than the than the Phil have sent to either Worlds or Euros. So, Ireland is well known as a land of saints and scholars, but Dublin as a city is the place of notions and uppityness. Like, I'm just going to quote for you a conversation I had with Julie Davis at the Cork Open this summer. Quiva, gal, hey 10. Thank you so much for organising a pub quiz for us here down in Cork. That's really great. But I hate when socials are in pubs, because, you know, pubs just never serve you Prosecco. Which, you know, apparently is a make or break here in Dublin. So I'm going to do a little bit of a quick roast down through the panel that we have here. So, Sarah Armstrong. I was very impressed by your speech, and by the way, the time for the roast I prepared beforehand. So, you are blessed in this debate because people don't really know you, so they're not able to actually go in and pick out details and kind of rip you apart on the Cork side. But just judging by your last name, it kind of sounds like something you'd hear from Dungeons and Dragons, where you're like, I have this really cool character with sideburns, so his last name is Burnside. So I'm assuming that underneath your jacket, you are absolutely ripped. You would be able to just bench press the entire HIST committee at once. And see, like, what?
We've had enough of the HIST committee bench pressing each other.
I somehow feel like that's a point for our side. And see, you're at the advantage here because unlike Cian Luddy, who has been in debating since 1916 itself, who saw the horrors of the Civil War and has decided to kind of shout at both sides from the middle ever since. And now Kevin Smith is running for auditor this year, and I'm assuming that he's running a bit off his own politics, being a libertarian. I read his manifesto, and there's some things I really like, which is like more individual freedoms for people within the HIST, for the HIST committee. I'm not too sure how I feel about the bi-monthly going out and killing poor people. I mean, look at your audience, increase it to weekly. Luke is ready for it. And now on to Sophie. Sophie, the very eager fresher who has gotten a couple of judge breaks and is here to speak at this debate that no one really wants to be here for. So I thought that was a bit low-hanging fruit to kind of just go for your enthusiasm, so I went through your Twitter and... I went to your Twitter, and I kind of got distracted because you interact with Jack Kennedy so much, and that just made me really sad. I just want to say I hate myself so much. I just want everyone to know that Jack Kennedy got monogrammed handkerchiefs for Christmas, and it was the highlight of the holiday for me. Never have I been more happy that the Irish Debating Council died. Now, on to Ronan. You kind of like personify the whole thing that happened with Nigel Farage, where it's like, any attention that we get is going to be good attention, right? It's like, hey there guys, there's these people called the Jews, and I have opinions on them, but I'm not going to let you know what those opinions are until I read the room and see what's going to get me the most social validation. It's a bit touch or go every time. So I actually have a couple of arguments about the motion. You may be surprised before I go to my long list of any other business. So, there's a lot of talk about how Dublin is a real city. Let's just wake up for a second. A real city is Paris or London or Barcelona. Dublin is essentially 12 Waterfords squished together. Sorry, Kelly. And like I lived in Tipperary, right next to Waterford, spent an inordinate amount of time in Waterford. It's a shithole. And if you combine 12 shitholes, you don't have a good city. You have 12 times as much shit. Right. To be fair to the Hist in Dublin. You're very good at taking care of the elderly. Like, we went in Cork. When if someone retires from debating, once they graduate, they're gone. Never see them again. Where is Clodagh Feely? Not here. So, but you're very good to the elderly, like poor old man Coleman. Still taking care of him to this day. Lend him come to the IB. Very generous. Well done, lads. And now a quick word from our sponsors. Hillbilly's Chicken, that was founded in Cork. We only use the most succulent chicken, coated in fine breadcrumbs and fried just to your liking. And that's one reason by itself why we shouldn't sing Cork, because you won't have hillbillies chickens anymore. And to the vegetarians in the room, number one, they milkshakes and shit. I don't know, do that. Number two, Munster is part of what we call the Golden Vale, the best place for agriculture in Ireland, very famous for its very fine grass that we use to feed our cattle. You can munch on that as well, you veggies. Okay, now on to my list of any other business, which is list of people who asked me to roast them. So it's Billy and Catherine and Nicole and Umag and Sive. You may notice that this list is completely made out of women. I don't ask men for advice. So I'll do a little bit of an individual roast before doing my own any other business at the very end. Umag asked me to roast her today. I would just like to... it's enough of roast in and of itself that Umang's type is sad, white, Tumblr, emotionally compromised boys who like science. I don't need to roast you, that's a punishment in of itself. Catherine Pacifica, she specifically sent me many messages with material about how to roast her because she enjoys the attention. I settled on how she negs people. She could be talking to someone that she has no strong feelings about, she's like, love, darling, honey, you are my best friend. It's great. And then she talks to someone she's desperately been in love with for years. Sup, nerd. Catherine Kelly, she came to me for jokes. And as we've heard, I put the shit in shit posting. I'm a second-tier shit poster. That was a bad decision on your part, Catherine. Any of her good jokes were mine. If you didn't like any of them, that was Catherine's. It's a subjective thing, but somehow still works. I've only had 2 conversations with Billy. And one of them happened today where she talked about how Sean Dermot, who has been in the Philosoph for many years, she's like, is that boy not from Galway? Which was, thankfully, like the best thing I've ever heard about Sean Dermot, that he mightn't belong to us. And this leads me on to Nicole, who shifted SDK at the last Trinity IB. That is a roast in of itself, but also, you deserve better, Nicole. Okay, so I have one last piece of business. I had more people to roast, but I unfortunately can't get to them. Harry Higgins of the Phil, pay us for the Cork IB slots, please! I saw the message! We have a tight budget! Very proud to oppose this motion, because you don't
we have Sophie.
And God looked upon this earth, and behold, it was corrupt. That's from Genesis 6:12. When God realized that the world he created had been ruined by humanity, he destroyed it. When God realized the world he created was filled to the brim with deviance, he knew what he had to do. He knew what was right to do. Today we're faced with a similar problem, ladies and gentlemen, but this deviance, this lack of morality is thankfully contained. To solve this issue, we need not flood the earth. It's not necessary for us to punish 7 billion people for the crimes of 100 million. To succeed, we must cut off this problem at its root. We are, after all, created in God's image, and we too should punish the corruption we have found, permeating the island of Ireland, even permeating, apparently, the walls of the GMB. And as a quick mech for this, I nominate Nicola Sullivan as the Noah for our arc. She asked me to mention her in my speech, and I think she'd be a wonderful option for the repopulation of Cork. Love you. Go on.
How can Dublin be the god in this scenario when this is where Fine Gael spend most of their time?
Shame indeed. Linking into Cuivamini, I was going to go into some rebuttal, mainly focusing on her speech, but I think that my relationship with Jack Kennedy has been hashed to death in this chamber for those of us who were around 2 years ago. So, come to the RNL, everyone. So now, like, I don't know a lot of people from Philosoph, so this is more of an assault on the general county of Cork and Cuivamini. So, I'm really sad to say that I've been to Cork twice in my life. The first, I was a 13-year-old child. Now, like, I've actually always been really, really cool. Like, we know this. So I happened to be in Cork for a first aid competition, where we would kind of all, like, pretend to be ill or injured and then, like, bandage each other up and, like, get graded. It was actually kind of, like, sick. But, so yeah, we get to Cork, and God bless St. John's Ambulance Clontarf. We get off the train, they haul us into a bus and bring us to the hostel. And you know what? From the ages of 13 to 18, I thought I loved Cork. People would bring it up and I'd be like, yeah, I had a good time in Cork. But it was sort of like looking back on a relationship with someone you didn't see that often. And what you did see from them, you kind of repressed. So like, yeah, like that was a good relationship, like I think. From what I remember, he was only vaguely ugly. And most of the time he was nice to me. Question mark?
Yes. Are you talking about Jack?
Librarians' opinions on my relationships with people, and I'll fucking oh my god. And so, like, I lived in this ignorance for like the next 5 years. So when the Cork IV sign-up came around, I was like, yeah, I want to make friends. I want to get involved in debating. So I was like, yeah, like I'll sign up to do the Cork IV with the HIST. And so anyway, I'm on the way to the Cork IV with the Phil, and it strikes me. This is like pretty far away from Dublin. Yes, sure.
I just want to point out that I'm wearing a filter because I forgot to do my dramatic
reveal.
reveal.
Fuck off, Shame indeed. And yeah, I'm on the way to like the Cork IV with the Phil, and they're all being like very loud and everything, and like cocaine with. And it strikes me like this is really far away from Dublin, and every time, and for every stop on the train, it's really clear that we're getting further and further from civilization. Like the concentration of like burrito shops and like donut delicatessens is really waning, and the amount of cows grows. And then we get into Cork, and something really terrible happens. The first reason God should be propelled to sing Cork, I meet Cuivamini. You may know Cuiva from debating shitposting, the closest thing to validation her debating career is ever going to give her. She gave me that joke, fuck off. Cuiva is reason enough to sing Cork into the sea. When you meet Cuiva, you're really confused because so there's this old man sitting there. He's chain smoking and he's talking about his retirement plans, but he's like stuck kind of Benjamin Button style in the body of a 12-year-old girl, and you're really confused. So it's like, okay, so you decide to get a coffee because like this has really confused you, and like this is my second beef with Cork. When you are in UCC and you want a coffee, the only place to go is fucking Daybreak to get shitty, overpriced coffee, Costa coffee from a, no thank you, from a shitty little machine. and you're just after like your third round of the day, and you've taken your third, fourth of the day, and honestly, you're kind of considering never debating again. And to add to all of this, like this shitty fucking bean juice, and like, and maybe like the way to solve this is to sign up to speak at a debate where we can like sink Cork into the sea, along with probably all of my insecurities that surround debating and like my college career in general. And anyway, like, then yeah. So, and then so we bring Cork people into Dublin. Then we're like, maybe the issue is like, the landscape. Like, it's so ugly, and they have this like massive fucking chip on their shoulders about it. Like, oh, Dublin is shite, Dublin is too loud, Dublin has an institutional and structural problem with homelessness that everyone there seems to be ignoring, sipping their direct provision funded Costa coffee and like wearing their Harrington jackets. Anyway, like, all so unfounded. But really, there's all this hostility from Cork people because of the colossal already mentioned chip they have on their shoulder because of their shitty little county. And I mean little in the least literal, most pejorative sense of the world. Like, imagine being so discontent, so upset about how awful your own county is, that you need to relentlessly assert that it's the real capital of Ireland. And I didn't make time with this, but like, you know the way you always hear that, like, people like finish their debates and they're like, oh, there we go. And they're like, oh, I'm so proud to propose. And it's like, are you proud to propose that motion where you just had to like defend chivalry in front of everyone? Honestly, like, I've never been more enthusiastic or happy to propose a motion. Thank you very, very much.
I would like to thank Sophie for that proselytization of her journey to preach to the masses down in Cork. And I would like to call upon Beth Mallon to continue the case.
Disclaimer, instead of there being 2 points in this speech, there's going to be 2 issues with this speech. Firstly, I'm deadly scared you won't laugh at my jokes, because, unlike everyone else, I'm not just going to go for the cheap shots of Jack Kennedy. That, you can see, Irish Debating Facebook page circa June 2017, so I will send you the link. So, my solution to this is that, for the first time in my life, I'm going to adopt the advice that Kevin clearly didn't adopt in his schooling career, much to the detriment of his future career. And I'm going to speak slowly and calmly like you're all daily. Give me the hands. Because you all laughed at his jokes, and now that I'm speaking like Kieran, if you don't laugh at mine, you're sexist. Which, given that this is the hist, would probably go down well as a complaint. Or at least it would have a few years ago. So, the thing about speaking like Kieran is it actually helps with my second issue, which is that, much like Sophie, but probably even more like Sophie, I do not have 7 minutes of material. However, I have set a goal for myself, which is to beat Ronan Daly's performance in the last Phil debate, which I think was about 4.5 minutes. So we'll see if we can do that. We're on about 1:10. No, we're running a bit later if I'm running out of time. Okay. So, we're at about 1 minute and 15 seconds. So, I think we can get at least a minute out of Galway. Because it seems really interesting to me that you all claim that you want to sing Cork, but then you realise that the only other fresher competition that you have to really get your grips into freshers and pull ones like Sophie away from the fill is Galway. And while Kevin doesn't want to... Thanks, Stephen, yes. While Kevin doesn't want to spend time in a hostel halfway up a mountain, Kevin seems to want to spend time in Nimos with no working showers or working floors that don't fall through, to be honest. Given that your budget didn't stretch to go to both this year, and you chose Cork, I think you're on our side. But I'm surprised this hasn't come up. If you sing Cork, where are you going to get all your A teams? Like Rory, Ronan, Daniel Gilligan, who might as well be from Cork, because he certainly doesn't hang out with all of ye. He hangs out with us. Like, where is he? But also, even Aisling with a H is from Macroom. Like, none of them are from Dublin, and none of them hang out with Dublin people. So it seems strange to me that you want to sink your own debating society, particularly because you seem to advertise yourselves, because you don't have the cocaine aspect going for you. You advertise yourselves as the debating society. So if you don't have that, all you're left with is orgies. And given the people in the hist, I don't think that's going to capture pressure as much as you think. So, look, even if Rory and Ronan didn't do as well as they wanted to at this Worlds, they still did a lot better than lots of your other Dublin teams, or even any of the Dublin teams, with the exception of one who is half Cork herself, as we've already said. But look, there's also loads of ancient debaters who came from Cork, which I'm not going to name, because despite what debaters think, that it's okay to know people like Sheng Wu Li or people who you don't actually know, that's not creepy, it is creepy. I'm just going to say that all of the debaters who debated for the hits and the fill were poached from the Cork private schools, or then Rochestown, which you seem to think is one, so you accept them as one of your own. Look, even your, like, non-debaters, and I'm going to talk about Luke here, because, look, you might not think I know Luke well enough, but it's not true. We both did National Model United Nations in school. I beat him, and that's why he's blushing. But also, it's okay, we've moved on up in the world. We're all here on our Wednesday night. But look, it's really interesting you chose drowning as a motion, Kaylee, because you think that debaters, and you said this in your own, like, info for the debate, you said that the debaters who came from Cork to Dublin switched sides. Luke invited 4 friends down to his house over the summer. And Luke owns a boat, in case you didn't catch that from his accent. And Luke brought people out on his boat and attempted to drown one of them. And you might say, yes, but Liam Smith is from rural Ireland. But you still claim that he's one of you. Go on, Luke.
The investigation is still pending.
Luke, I think for your legal sake, you might want to just sit down and say nothing. It's morally better. But just a few quibbles. Look, firstly, you claim that Cork is just a small town. How many hillbillies do ye have? Because we have 4. And I think that's fair going, given how much time you spend in there at every debating competition you come down to, that you come down to every year, might I add. But also, Kevin, joke's on you, because I definitely didn't break the first time I went to Worlds with Lawsock. But thank you for the compliment all the same. It's great to see you're stalking all our Wikipedia pages in your spare time. Like, I'd have thought you'd have something better to do. You say that the Americans were shit crap, but I think they might have actually just kicked you out. So, much like a shit schoolie, I am now approaching 5 minutes, which actually is pretty decent for a schoolie. So I'm going to sit down now. Ronan, beat 5 minutes.
I would like to thank Beth for that fine speech and highlighting one of the many issues involving sanctity of life and the treasure of position. And I'd now like to call upon Ronan Daly to continue the case of the proposition.
Ronan, how the fuck are you still a mate?
Ronan,
He doesn't know what to say.
I genuinely don't. Like, do you want to
Anytime, Paul.
Sorry?
Go on, just keep talking to me.
Afterwards, yeah. So, since it's your first time speaking in the chamber, you're entitled to Maiden's rights.
No, thank you. Chair, adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen. I love Cork. I love the River Lee. And its smell. I love the way you can get on a bus with 50 quid note, hand it to the bus driver, and they fucking can't do anything like it. I love the way people aren't stingy with rollies in nightclubs, because the chances are you're related to them. But I love Cork. But the thing is, sometimes when you really love something, you have to drown it with your hands. I might be sure. There's going to be 2 parts to this speech. The first is about the Titanic, which Kevin Smith mentioned, which kind of made me feel bad about this as a strategy. And the second is about issues in this debate that were not the Titanic. I mightn't get to that one last. The Titanic was a very important event, and there's a lot of context. Anyway, before I do, I've got some points of rebuttal. So the first is to Kieran, and it was great to see Kieran giving a speech. I really enjoyed it. It's nice to see him giving a speech that I hadn't written. I think in this instance might have been a great move, but anyway. The second thing is Quiva. Really enjoyed the speech as well. I did the classic Cork thing, you know, of like, yeah, we're pricks, but you're bigger pricks. Which fair enough, but doesn't mean you're not getting sunk. What followed that was like 14 or 15 minutes of like stuff that you have to be really waist deep in GMB debating bullshit to understand. And to my shame, I did understand some of those. If for people who didn't, it's not worth it. If you understand why they're funny, you gotta take a long look at the last 3 or 4 years of your life, the sorts of information you've been storing, the sorts of people you've been hanging around with. But anyway, look, the Titanic. So the Titanic. The RMS Titanic was a British passenger liner that sank in the North Atlantic Ocean in the early morning hours of the 15th of April 1912. That date is also the birthday of Emma Watson. Not 1912. She's younger. I don't know. I'm not an expert with maths. Like I don't know what age she is. But the ship collided with an iceberg during its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City, which was highly inconvenient for those on board. The disaster, what, too soon, is it? The disaster was met with worldwide shock and outrage at the huge loss of life and the regulatory and operational failures that had led to it. Public inquiries in Britain and the United States led to major improvements in maritime safety. Silver lining. Here. One of their most important legacies was the establishment in 1914 of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. The acronym for that is SOLAS, which I know is not what it was, but I guess it was a complicated event. They had to go for it.
You sure needed maritime safety when you went for a swim, you fat cock.
Absolutely done in. Let me talk about my Titanic facts. Additionally, several new wireless regulations were passed around the world in an effort to learn from the many missteps in wireless communications, which could have saved many more passengers. Never again will we treat wireless communication with the disgraceful and blatant disregard for protocol exhibited by the technicians of the Titanic. Originally, the vessel was marketed as the unsinkable ship, which got to be very awkward after the ship sank. Luckily for the architect of the ship, Thomas Andrews, he was on board and never had to face such awkward chat. Nice one, Thomas. Of course, rest in peace. At this point in the speech, you may be thinking, wow, these Titanic facts are incredibly interesting and informative. And also, the guy saying them is really handsome. Which, I mean, thanks, guys. You may also be wondering how it relates to the debate at hand. The answer to that is twofold. Firstly, there is never a bad time to learn about the Titanic. And some things are more important than silly debates, like the Titanic, the seminal tragedy of the 20th century. Go for it, Liam.
So, what was a bigger disaster, the Titanic or your speech last week in the film?
100% my speech last week in the film. I mean, fewer people died, but more people were mortified. Second reason I'm talking about the Titanic. Where was the last place that the Titanic stopped before it began its ill-fated journey across the Atlantic? That's right, Cove! And where is Cove? It's in Cork. Where was the city that pushed, the city that pushed the Titanic into its watery grave before it was ready? Implying that it never would be ready, but listen. Before it had the chance to spread its proverbial wings and fly, the city that failed to protect the Titanic in its hour of need, that city was Cork. And it is my solemn belief that what Cork did to the Titanic should happen to Cork in turn. Some people say, look, this attitude is destructive. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. But actually, and I've thought about this, that's not how it works, right? So because I take your eye, and then you take my eye, and then I take your second eye, and then you're trying to take my last eye. But you can't. Because I have one eye, and you have absolutely none. And in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So it's a win-win, basically. That's about as far as I want to go in terms of logically teasing out that argument. But I think you guys can tell that I'm onto some pretty next-level shit. The next part of my speech seeks to ask and answer the question, is Cork good? Or is it, in fact, bad? The rest of the debate has tried to get at this, but I think other speakers might have lacked sort of a scientific approach, which I think you know, I've got one, I think it's going to produce a definite answer. So what is that approach? So I'm going to say one good thing about Cork and then one bad thing, and then when I run out of things to say, I'm going to sit down and have a little cry because the true nature of knowledge is unknowable. So one good thing, in Cork they call hot chicken rolls, not chicken fillet baguettes. What the fuck is a chicken fillet baguette? One bad thing, the horrific anti-Semitism which poisons the heart of every Corkonian. Another good thing, the Jazz Festival. Every year, this country's finest jazz musicians and cocaine enthusiasts get together to celebrate that fine art form, and they also play some jazz. Another bad thing, Cork has the highest level of insurance fraud of any city in Europe. Might not seem like a big deal, but for those of us who care about our insurance premiums. Okay, one last good thing, the Butter Museum. I mean, there's no Butter Museum in Dublin. But I suppose there is, you know, better nightlife, the chance to meet people you aren't related to or hate, and actual employment prospects. So look, with that, I'd like to thank you all very much.
I would like to thank Ronan for that fine speech about sinking ships.
Yes, you can. All over.
And I would like to call upon Ian to close the case for the opposition.
Just 1 second.
Please.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Just when I got off the bus in Dublin, there was a lot of shit around. And there's been a lot of shit said so far, so my clean boots have gotten dirty again before I had to come up here. What have I got for you tonight? Well, my speech content is a little bit like the post-hist committee meeting consensus in regards sexual matters, and that is fuck all. So, what I'm actually going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is assorted blue-clad Marxist rabble, pet conservatives that the hist are willing to keep but the Phil wouldn't touch with a 10-foot yard. I'm mostly going to do some extraneous rebuttal, mostly directed towards the last speaker, but just a few bits that I picked out as not being particularly relevant in the previous speakers, but the things that I can most make hay with comedy-wise. And then before that, I'm kind of going to take a leaf out of Ronan's book with this kind of dialectical materialism of saying good thing about Cork, bad thing about Cork, good thing about Dublin, bad thing about Dublin, and make you think using that kind of stuff. So let's start with Ronan, seeing as he was the last speaker. I thought that Ronan came up here and gave a great impersonation of a catheter. And usually how that joke goes is that he was very successful in taking the piss out of us. The way that the joke that I'm envisaging is that you wouldn't want him anywhere near your genitals. And if he has been, you're probably in hospital. In terms of what Ronan actually gave us, right? The Titanic, right? What a Titanic load of shit, right? I think, in terms of the sinking of the Titanic, only good came from that, right? Safer seas, he told us himself. I said in the PI, dead Brits. That should go down well with you guys. And a great film. I don't really watch it for the plot, but the sexy bit in the car is kind of cool, I think. Then he taps into this whole Titanic thing, right? Let's take him at his best. Let's assume Titanic was a tragedy. Get woke, lads. It wasn't, right? But let's assume it was, right? An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, right? And he tells us, you know, we can kind of apply this to an extent. We should drown Cork because they drowned the Titanic and things like that. Look, a drowning for a drowning leaves us all a bit damp, right? Being damp is fairly shit, right? I don't like it. I don't think it's good. In terms of what we got from earlier speakers, what do we get? Oh yeah, big quarrel that we got out of the first speaker, Sarah, was that, you know, if we, the BBC interviewed some people about flooding in Cork, right? And it was kind of shit because you had to listen to like our thick culture accents or whatever. No thanks. If you drown the fucking place, they're probably going to kick up a fuss as that happens, right? We're kind of sensitive to water. We're like the Wicked Witch in the West, right? Except the accents are a lot more harsh and guttural, and we're a bit more green and have longer noses as well. You're going to have to listen to that an awful lot more if you decide to drown Cork, right? The other thing was basically just a caricature of Cork as kind of like a racist shire, right? And other people saying that I'm the Hobbit who lives there, right? Like, those were fairly good films again. I'm mostly just kind of talking about films I enjoy, to be honest, at this stage. But like, kind of a good film. I would have enjoyed a bit more in this Shire just making tea. Like, I'm not incredibly one for the adventures. God knows why the fuck I'm up here. Secondly then, Kevin. He admitted that they are West Brits. That will become important later, so just bear that in mind, right? Just tune in, just think West Brit in your head, and it'll become relevant later. I'll give you the cue, right? More important thing, it says that, like, you know, we should drown Cork because it's got an inferiority complex, right? Look, I'm sorry, right? But I was not the fucker who set a motion about drowning my countrymen because it would get some cheap laughs, right? If there is an inferiority complex at play, I think it might lie over on that side. Lastly then, in terms of extraneous rebuttal, two things towards Sophie and what she gave us, right? She briefly gestured towards a mech, right? A mechanism for how we're going to do this. She invoked God, right? You're all godless here, so I don't know why you should buy that as a mech. Like, what the fuck are you going to use as your mech, right? Are you all just going to fucking cry so much that Jeremy Corbyn is British as opposed to Irish, right? Are you going to find something that upsets you to cry about and drown Cork that way? The last thing, coffee, is shit in Cork. What the fuck is coffee? And is it like tea? Lastly then, just in terms of characterising this bench that you've got in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Armstrong, she was the one who sold out the 6 counties in London, right? Kevin Smith, wasn't it he that sold the Black and Tans biscuits and coffee during the Rising? Sophie Furlong-Tai, who was supposed to be keeping an eye on the potatoes in 1845? You! And Roland Daly, who shifted the Queen in Magaluf last summer and told her he'd call her. What stands before you, ladies and gentlemen, is a collection of West Brits who are willing to drown their fellow countrymen for a cheap laugh. It will take more than a shower to drown Cork, but a shower is all that we have against us here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to do a few quick points now of comparative between Cork and Dublin, show why we're superlative and we don't deserve our watery graves. Actually, I'll take the POI before I do. Go on, Ron.
The one thing about, you know, the water in Cork is I think you might get a bit of a wash can, which might pick up the old smell.
Like, look, some people just can't take the smell of the country, right? I shower every morning in Slurry, down in Cork, they think it's sexy, right? So, what are the points of comparative, right? Number one, revolutionary politics. In Dublin, revolutionary politics, what passes for it, is having arguments in the arts block bathrooms in Marker about whether or not Sinn Féin can get elected. In Cork, it's when I see an English tourist couple with a baby in a pram, I kick that baby in the face. because that baby gurgled during the Angelus and showed disrespect. That, ladies and gentlemen, is revolutionary practice. There are other areas as well, though, where there's small differences. Like, there are a lot of areas in which Cork and Dublin are almost the same. Like, in Cork, we will have homeless old men getting sick into a bin, and it's kind of a cultural experience, something that brings us all together. Isn't it gas as an old man getting sick into a bin? In Dublin, you have that too, but it's a recycling bin, and you're proud of them. Lastly, what have I got? Oh yeah, lastly, on a kind of like a personal note, right? My sister's here in the audience, right? You poached her. You brought her up here, right? Before she came here, she was a nun. Now she has approximately 6 abortions a year. But only if the fetus is straight. This is what Dublin does to people. This is what it does to the human spirit. This is how you turn small, pure little children into people who want to drown their countrymen and abort straight fetuses. I urge you, ladies and gentlemen, to oppose.
Isn't it you who have the English market?
What?
Isn't you who have the English market?
Don't go there, boy. Yeah, straight over, boy. Straight over.